than our resumes. So even though you went to this school or you worked at this company, that isn't who you are. We're all humans, we're all individuals. And what a resume does is it enables employers to see, what skill sets we can bring to the table. But if I were to say, who am I? I'm just a curious guy. So, my resume says president of BlackRock speaks, a software engineer at BlackRock. That's just what I do. That's just where my curiosity has led me. Fundamentally, I'm a creative. I like building things. I like coding. I've even dabbled in a bit of artwork, making art, doing animations, comedy animations, highlighting my slightly controversial humor. But that was kind of like a thing that I got out of my system. Yeah. So no comedy these days.
So no comic book coming out soon from Mathew?
No, I stopped that when I was like nine years old. But yeah, I'm just a software engineer. I'm really interested in the African tech ecosystem because I was born and raised in London, but I find that although I was born and raised there and I could stay there, have a very nice lucrative career, I feel like it's my duty as a Ugandan to use my knowledge and my skill set to improve my home country. So, I'm in London, I enjoy it. I plan to stay there for at least a few more years. But I feel like there's going to be a point in time whereby I'm like, I've maxed out I've reached the glass ceiling, if you will, in my career as a software engineer in London. I want to now transition into greener pastures in Africa, specifically East Africa. And someone asked me earlier, why specifically East Africa? Why East Africa? And it's simply because I'm Ugandan, right? I'm from East Africa. So why not work starting my home country? Because I can't, people think that Africa is just one country, especially abroad. They think it's one country, but Africa is a very big space. It's actually larger than Europe, the UK. Actually, I may need a fact checker, but it's actually much larger than people think it is. So the way things are done in the UK are done differently to the way things are done in Uganda, are done differently to the way things are done in, say, Ghana. Although they are similar, but there's no one-size-fits-all solution for all markets. Africa's a big place. I want to start in East Africa, starting in Uganda, perhaps Rwanda, perhaps Kenya, but I'll see where I go from there. But yeah.
Amazing. Interesting that you also talk about looking for greener pastures, right? Because it's kind of ironic as a software engineer grown or like based in Uganda, raised, working in Uganda, the idea and notion that these are greener pastures is kind of controversial, right? Or even unspoken or unheard of. Most would think that with your experience working in London, that's where we want to be, that's where as a software engineer you want to be. Work in Uganda, get a job that's paying you amazing money in London, and then keep there and keep doing that, right? So why do you feel that in your case it's rather the other way around? Why does Uganda be the greener pasture for you?
That's a very interesting question. I think that it's all about playing systems. So once you're in the UK, it's easy to get a job. It's easy to get networks. It's easy to get money. But in Africa, it's not so easy to do that. But in Uganda, it's easy to get a higher return on your investment, while in the UK, it's not. So I spent my whole life in the UK. So I've played that system of increasing my network, increasing my money. But like I mentioned earlier, there's a glass ceiling to how high one can ascend in that kind of system. Then you look at something like Uganda, where there's seemingly no opportunity, but in reality there are lots of opportunity, and I'm sure that everyone here can agree that there is a lot of opportunity. The only thing is that to access those opportunities, you may need resources that people don't have. You may need connections that people don't have. But like I said, in the UK, I've got the resources and connections. Now the aim is to leverage those, deploy them here, and use those two different systems in a way that no one does. Because most people either focus on exclusively on the UK or exclusively in Uganda, but no one really talks about using both. So that's kind of like what I mean by greener pastures. Yeah.
That makes sense. And you've talked about access to resources and access to opportunities, which brings you to another thing I actually wanted us to talk about, which is the question of privilege, right? Do you feel that being born and raised in the UK sort of gave you access to this privilege in terms of resources and abundance of opportunities that then allows you to be able to explore and try to venture into something that you want to then be doing now?
Absolutely. I feel like being born in the UK, there's no doubt about it. There's no way for me to sugarcoat it. It's absolutely a privilege. However, privilege is relative, right? Everybody here is privileged. We're all alive. We're all walking. We're all privileged. There's people who didn't wake up today, right? So all of us have our own unique privileges. What I'd say is, like you're playing cards, right? And I feel like I'm not qualified to talk about this because I don't play any card game whatsoever, so I don't have the qualifications to speak on this. But when you're playing cards, what you do is you play the cards you're dealt with. You don't, complain and say, oh, that person has, a better hand than me. No, you get given cards and you're like, how can I use these cards to play as well as I can?
Yeah.
So ultimately, I agree. Yes, I am privileged, but everyone else here is privileged. We're all privileged in different ways. Some people have different connections. Some people have access to knowledge that I don't have. Some people have abilities. Some people have connections and family and whatnot that I don't have. So we're all uniquely privileged, and it's a matter of playing your cards to the best of your ability. That's what.
Amazing. Being the president of BlackRock Speaks, right, which is a group of 700 plus employees within the organization that are trying to lobby and talk about different things. I want to understand, a software engineer, president of an organization and sort of representing this, and then now wanting to venture into building something of your own, right? It's quite a stretch in terms of like the journey and difference of like industries or contexts. How are you dealing with that, and why do you specifically then choose to do these so?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So ultimately, my philosophy in life is to always push myself, to always stretch myself. A lot of people make excuses. They may be like, oh, I'm not ready to do that, or I may be too tired to do that, or I'm not qualified to do that. My philosophy is, whether I'm ready, whether I'm not qualified, whether I don't think it's time, I'm always gonna, step out and do something to the best of my ability. So with public speaking, that was a weakness. So what I'm doing right now, all of you are actually witnessing a miracle, because I am not a public speaker. I'm just someone who decided, I want to work on my public speaking ability, and I decided to drill it every single week for over a year. And it's funny because I feel like at a certain point God spoke to me, because exactly 1 year from the moment I decided to practice public speaking, I was then made president of BlackRock Speaks, which put me in a position to get more public speaking opportunities in front of bigger people. I spoke to over 300, well, not over 300, but over 100 managing directors at my company, and I was terrified. I was nervous. I forgot how to speak English. I was shaking, but I still did it, and that's what that matters. And I've done lots of other things to push myself out of my comfort zone. Like one time I went out for 30 days, and every day for 30 days I would speak to 100 strangers every single day, just to get myself used to speaking to people, get myself used to rejection, get myself used to being uncomfortable. And frankly, I'd say that changed my life. That actually changed my life, because it completely changed my perspective on fear. I realized that fear is temporary. As long as you push through the fear, you can do whatever you want to. So to answer your question, Colin, about how these things are different, are stretches, I feel like nothing really is a stretch. It's just that we tell ourselves that things are hard, but when we actually push through the discomfort and actually get to the greener pastures, you realize that you're actually capable of a lot more than you think. So I don't really see it as a stretch, but that may seem like I'm bragging, but I'm telling you from experience of being uncomfortable and realizing that it's actually not that big of a deal. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Powerful, very, very powerful. And I think to follow through on that, right? Let's first backtrack back to like your very first, I guess, role as a freelancer. Yeah. I want to hear more about that. What was What was that like? How was it freelancing? Were you getting gigs? Were you getting work? And how did that then lead to your next opportunity?
Yeah, so all of our journeys are very winding, very unpredictable. And I'd say that was like my gateway drug into software engineering. So at school, I got decent grades. I wasn't like a star student. So I got into college that wasn't, all fancy. But when I was studying the course I was studying in college, they had us building, there was an assignment where we had to build websites. And in that assignment, I found my love for software engineering. I found my love for web development. And I did that stuff just for free. I did that because I love doing it. I spent multiple hours every day, not even for my coursework, just because I fell in love with it. And it got to a point where I fell so deep in love with it that my colleagues, my peers in my college course noticed, and they actually decided, I don't want to do my homework. Why don't I get this guy to do it? And at that point, I had an economically viable skill that I could charge for. And it's funny because I wasn't even charging that much. It was about £10 a week for each website, because it took me like several hours. And £10 is about like what? About 40K. Obviously, and that was in the UK, right? So you're not gonna get far with just 40K, as they say. But I was doing it for just that amount of money, and it wasn't really about the money. It was more about me doing something that I was passionate about. I didn't really care, and that experience then enabled me to have further experiences, like even better opportunities. Like when I got to my university, that's when I got my first ever job. Like when I was younger, I tried to get like a job, but I just failed, right? I was trying to get like a paperboy job, a delivery boy job, but I got rejected. So I was pleased to know that my first ever job was a job that I actually loved, which is being a web developer, like a full, part-time, because I was studying, a part-time job, which was a web developer for my university. And that was off of the back of me working for cheap for my peers. Now, when I was in university, I was actually earning, decent money for a student as a web developer. So that was actually like the very beginning of my journey as a software engineer.
And my takeaway from this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is passion, right? Passion and love for what you're doing, and doing that regardless of, for the start, whether that's paying you a huge amount of money or not, as long as you love what you're doing and you're sort of getting some compensation or value from it, right? So you should go for that.
Yeah, and I'll leave you with a quote. They say that my mom always says it. Says, do what you love, and you will never work a day in your life. So I started doing websites, and it wasn't work for me. I was getting paid for it, but it wasn't work for me. And that's how I ended up being a web developer for my university. That's how I started working at Accenture as a software engineer. That's how I worked at my university professor startup. That's how I worked at my current company right now. And the whole time, it wasn't work. And it's funny because it's kind of weird, because I still don't feel like I'm working, because I would do what I'm doing for free if my living expenses were covered, right? But I've got to cover them now. But I would do them for free anyways. But yeah, so I don't feel like I'm working. So that's why I think that's probably why I have a lot of energy, because I work, but it's not draining, it's energizing. So that's why I'm like, okay, I've got this excess energy. Why don't I branch out and do something else, like public speaking, or going to different countries in Africa, doing some research, networking. Why don't I do these things? Because I have a lot of energy. So that's what I'd say.
Amazing. I follow through again with your experience. A lot of the companies you've worked for are within the finance space. You're looking at, I don't know if while at Bloomberg you're also still working within the finance department. So Bloomberg, were you?
No. I forgot to correct that earlier. So that was a small error. So basically, the Bloomberg and Goldman Sachs, I wasn't actually working for them. Those are job offers. So basically, I did a bunch of interviews. I got rejected by most companies, as you do. Facebook, Google didn't get back to me. Palantir, a lot of companies rejected me. But the few that did just happened to be all the finance companies that I applied to, which was Bloomberg, Goldman Sachs, and BlackRock. So I got 3 job offers, but I chose BlackRock. And yeah, I felt they're all finance companies, right? And but I'd say that they're all finance companies, but I chose BlackRock, and here I am.
That's very interesting to know that. And so why BlackRock versus, because everyone here pretty much knows about Goldman and Sachs, you know about Bloomberg, but not everyone knows about BlackRock, right? But you then chose BlackRock. Why?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, when I get asked this question, people often expect me to give a nice motivational speech as to why I chose BlackRock, but simply because they offered more money.
That makes
That's it.
sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, that's
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
that's enough motivation for
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
That makes sense. Now, talking about what you're thinking about right now, because in my conversation with you, you've talked about exploring possibly starting something of your own within Uganda, right? And you're sort of like within that exploration phase right now. Yeah, what does that look like at the moment? Are you solidified on what you're going to be doing next, or are you still pretty much figuring that out?
Yeah, so that part is probably like, I don't think I'm qualified to speak on that part, because that's actually why I'm here. So I'm here to actually listen to everyone here. So, I heard from Martin, he gave me some, insights on how if you do something well in one market, then it works for a variety of, specifically in East Africa. If you do something well in East Africa, then it generally can generalize to other countries in East Africa. So I don't have the ideas just yet. But what I'm here is to get an understanding of how things work on the ground, such that when I go back to London, I can meditate on something, or perhaps I could even collaborate. With a few people here on something. But ultimately, I'm completely green.
Yeah.
I don't know what the startup ecosystem is all about. That's why I'm actually excited to meet all of you. So although I'm speaking now, really what I want to do is I want to be listening. So yeah, that's what I say.
I guess then we'll definitely go and get ready to pitch your startups. But anyway, interesting that you say that. So what does collaboration look like for you? And paraphrasing and thinking, if you're not then going to do something of your own, what does collaboration for someone right here and telling them that, hey, I'm going to give you 5K to support you with building this? Is that you going in and saying, hey, I'm going to support you with the software or technical expertise required to build this product? Let's talk about what that looks like for you.
I'd say collaboration is an open book. Basically, I'd say money is not the issue.
Yeah.
Because one thing I realize is that funding is everywhere. The only thing that is the issue is brain power. So as long as you have a team with adequate brain power, adequate resourcefulness, you're going to be able to reach out to the necessary people to raise money. Because I was in Kenya, and quick story. So I was in Kenya, I met someone, and they connected me to someone else, and it happened that that person was making a company, and they wanted me to come on board, right? And initially I said no, because I didn't want to leave BlackRock, right, to go to Kenya full time. But a few weeks later, a student at the University of Philadelphia, is it? Some university, in some Ivy League university in America. He was in Kenya. He joined with them, and they ended up raising about 50K in like 2 weeks. So they just by having that person from the US join their team, they were able to raise 50K and have real money to work towards building out their idea. And I said no initially because I didn't think that these guys were able to raise money or have any sort of viable capital injected into the business. But that completely just changed my entire life around funding, especially funding in Africa. It showed me that it's not about the money, because getting money is easy. It's all about having brain power. So as long as you're working with smart people, working with people who have a good vision, working with people who have business knowledge and maybe have insight into what would make a viable business, then that's good to go. So ultimately, when it comes to collaboration, I say I'm looking for people who are in it for, money is nice. Money is nice. You need money, but they want a little bit more than just money, because that's kind of like what startups take. They take a lot more than money. It's energy, resourcefulness, as I said, brain power. So collaboration to me is just joining a balanced team. I'm technical, but actually a quick tangent. I find that in the early stages of startups, you want to have, say, a team who are jacks of all trades. So you don't want to have like a specialist in AI, you know, just working with you. You want to have someone who can do a bit of sales, someone who can do a bit of marketing, someone who can run the finance department a little bit, someone who might be able to make a website, someone who can do some networking, someone who can do fundraising. So you want to have a jack of all trades, but the only thing that is mainly required is at least in the beginning, the only thing that is mainly required in the beginning is the heart and the desire for it. That's what I'd say.
All right, cool. I think you mentioned something there that was interesting and also controversial, right? And here's why I'm going to say why. The conversation about capital, about brain power, and also about money, right? You mentioned that it's easy to raise money when you have brain power, right? But I think the question I do then want to pose to you is access to that brain power that then makes it easy to raise money as easy to get, right? Because, I mean, your example was these folks had this guy from University of Pennsylvania, right? How many people do you then have access to that, right? And I think that's a very hot conversation around raising in Africa, which is a lot of the companies that have then gone ahead to raise a lot of this money either have like those folks from Ivy League dropped in and then they raise money. And without that, you then can't raise the money. So I guess my question here is, do you necessarily think that's true? And do you necessarily also think that that's an inhibitor for raising money?
Yeah, actually, I think that's a very good point, because going back to the question of privilege, Colin, you hit the nail on the head. So that's probably me speaking from the perspective of privilege. Because in the UK, at least, it's very easy to get money. And in Africa, we have this notion of brain drain, where the most capable, most talented people go seeking greener pastures again, but these greener pastures are in the UK. So brain drain is actually a really big deal. That's why for me, my personal mission is to basically reverse the effects of brain drain by inviting people from Africans from the diaspora back to their home countries so that they can analyze opportunities and use their unique skill set to basically improve and develop the country. And like I won't put these guys on the spot. So you guys don't have to say anything. But that's why I brought my cousin Aaron, my cousin Isaac over there. I brought them here just so that they could actually come back to the motherland, understand what life is like. And the beauty is they told me, like, literally after 2 days they realized Uganda isn't actually as bad as they thought it was. So while before they came here, they were like, I don't think I'd actually stay in that country. But after coming here properly and actually experiencing it, they realized that they do see themselves having a future here. And that's just after a few days of being here in Uganda. So although, yes, I agree, it's not very easy to access the brain power because of brain drain. But that's why on my end, I'm trying to do my part. So, broadcast Africa, beyond overseas, and hopefully inspire more of my fellow people in the diaspora to come back home and then start collaborating. Like, you talk about collaboration. Start collaborating with our people in Uganda. So that's what I say.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting to see happen. I guess Donald and the team, we have a resource here to plug us with more brain power and give us access to a lot of other people who are willing to collaborate. But as we jump into, I guess, the Q&A with the rest of the people, my last question to you would be, you've been in the UK and London, and you've been in Uganda for how long now?
6 days.
6 days.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest opportunity you've seen that may not exist in the UK, but is very huge in Uganda?
Yeah.
And maybe people don't even know about it. Like Ugandans don't even know about it.
I'd say fish farming. So I say fish farming. Like, Ugandans do know about it, but I'm not sure if everyone here is kind of like involved in fish farming. I was fortunate enough to watch a video yesterday or the day before on fish farming, and I heard that it's very, very profitable. The hardest part about fish farming, based on what I've heard from a fish farmer, is actually getting that initial capital and setting up you'll farm. But once you have everything set up, then it's a very profitable endeavor. Apparently, the money that you make is on a monthly basis. And now this is just me hearing, off of hearing it from one person. But if I were to be in Uganda, the first thing I'd do isn't make another dating app for each tribe in Uganda. Rather, I'd focus on unique problems that are unique to Africa, and I'd start with doing something that everybody needs. Everybody here needs to eat food, right? So I'd start with agriculture. Good luck growing a chocolate in London. That's not going to happen. I wish you the best if you try that. That's why you can only do that here. I focus on agriculture, specifically on fish farming. But that's what I say, just farming, basically.
Yeah. I personally have a thing against farming and agriculture, but it's good to see that you never know. Maybe that's the opportunity that we need to explore. So at this point, I then want to open it up to the rest of you to ask Mathew as many questions as you have. And for context, again, because Mathew said he's going to be looking for folks to collaborate with, maybe we'll do it this way. You introduce yourself, your name, what you're doing or what you're building, so that we get to know that, and then you ask your question. I hope that sounds good. We have no actual mic around. This is a mic for the TV, so it won't produce any sound, but please just still use it. So who would like to ask their first question?
Hello, my name is Martin Imaniragaba. I'm a business strategy consultant, mostly for startups. I'm also a startup builder, and I'm very, very passionate about it. Oh, I'm also the sales and business development lead volunteer for Founders Launch Uganda. So allow me to say it's very good to have all of you here. Please feel very welcome. So my question for Donald is this: we had a chat earlier, and then I would actually first like to agree with one of the things he pointed out from personal experience. So I would like to agree with him on the fact that raising money for startups is not as, and this is from personal experience, it's not as hard as it appears. If you come to actually see it, you find that there are other problems. But raising money is not as hard. Though I would like to point out it's mostly networks. And I think that's one of the things that he pointed out, like the brain power around the idea, and are these guys able to have all these networks in place? Raising is usually, it has everything to do with net. My question is this: there are a lot of ideas that you have probably seen, and then there are a lot of problems that we have in Africa. Now these problems, you either see them as challenges or as problems or as opportunities. It's one of those. So after you seeing what you've seen, and given that already there are several of these people who are building things to solve some of these challenges, and you now having the perspective of, let's say, the other world, people with a lot of, let's say, disposable income and investable income and things like that, do you think you personally, or even these other people in the diaspora, do you see there being us being in a position whereby we have more collaborations with, let's say, individuals such as yourself or all these other guys, so that someone knows that, let's say, there are several people who are like Mathew, and then they are going to come to Uganda, and then they are going to see all these very many people building these very wonderful solutions, and then they are able to help them out and collaborate with them, maybe to just raise money from the different people out there and things like that. Do you see something like that happening more? Thank you.
If I understand your question, you're asking me, do I see people from the diaspora coming back here and collaborating with people who are based in Uganda? Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not necessarily living here, but it it might not be necessarily just living here, but also just collaborating with people here mostly, because we have the opportunities. We have very many of them. So do you see a lot of collaboration happening based on at least what you've seen? Because you've maybe seen how the environment is.
Yeah. Do I see it happening now already, or do I see it happening in the future? Is that what you mean?
In the future.
Future. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great question. And to be honest, I feel like for two reasons, it's going to happen for two reasons: the rise of remote work and social media. So social media, I'm going to put YouTube into this as social media. Social media is how I met, some amazing people in Uganda, and basically it makes it so that networking, because as you said, Martin, it's all about networks. Networking can be done overseas. I can network with someone in North America, in Antarctica, in London, in Ghana, all using my phone, right? And remote working enables me to earn an income. Maybe I want to still work for my company in the UK. I can still earn an income while living in Africa. So those two things, remote social media enabling me to facilitate or foster relationships with people abroad, and two, enabling me to earn a living by working while I'm still abroad, will basically enable people who are in the diaspora to shift locations back to a country that they prefer living in. Because let's not lie, the climate in the UK and the US, I think I've never been to the US before, but the climate in the UK isn't ideal, and every African that I speak to complains about the weather, but the reason that they're there is because of the money, right? But if you're able to work remotely in Africa, maybe still earning your pounds and whatnot, and using that money not for living a luxury lifestyle, but for investing in the country, and using that maybe to hire employees, start a startup, that's going to open up more opportunities. And then pairing that with the relationships that they built using social media, which is actually, social media is actually the only reason I'm here, because I messaged someone, they set this up, they posted it on social media, and then I reached out to a few of you, I connected with you on social media. So social media is very powerful, and to answer your question, I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's already happening. People are starting to collaborate more, just like that person from the Ivy League university in America who came to Kenya and then partnered up with those Kenyan founders and raised 50K investment. Stuff like that is already happening, and it's going to happen even more in the future. That's what I'd say.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Nwanyesiga. I work with Uganda Investment Authority as a Deputy Director, Science, Technology, and Innovation, but still I'm a founder of a startup called ACAD that connects farmers with merchants, agro-dealers, market, and the financiers. Thank you for the encouraging words and the zeal. I have two things to put across. One is I invite you to come to UIA, Uganda Investment Authority. I take you through the incentives that are available for investors like you that you can benefit from and then grow your business. Number two is all of you here, you are my potential clients. Where I sit in my directorate is to make sure we create an enabling environment for the businesses, basically SME startups, to grow and thrive. So I know you have tools, you have products that are there to solve challenges, but now there is a big disconnect, the users and the developers. So as you are what we are doing now, we are developing a national SME portal that is going to be a link, a gateway of information between the developers of the products or business service providers and the users. So I want to encourage you. We are likely to launch it in June. So the link will be out there. The portal will be public. Everyone will access. So once it is there, I want you to onboard yourself so that you are able to sell your services to the user. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, we can exchange details afterwards, and I'm happy to come along and learn more about the opportunity. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Tech lead at an NGO called Inside Africa. Mine might be a little bit technical, to the technical side. You said you had 3 job offers in the beginning, and all of them were financial companies. So was there something that brought that up? For example, maybe you are specializing in the financial services or something of the sorts? Or it just so happened by coincidence? Then my second question was, let's check. All right, the rest might be follow-up questions.
So to answer your question, to answer your question, I had zero finance experience whatsoever. Getting those finance offers, honestly, I got all 3 offers very differently. So the Bloomberg offer, I got that by reaching out to a recruiter, and then having them, set me up on like the recruitment process.
Just a quick follow-up question: did you know the recruiter?
No, going back to social media, I just connected with them on social media, and then they talked to me, they referred me, and then that's what started the process. So I did not know the recruiter. The Goldman Sachs one, that one was interesting because that was through a connection that I had from my previous company, from Accenture. So I had a relationship, and when I say relationship, I mean like a professional relationship with a colleague who I worked with in Accenture. And then because I did good work, many years ago, before that moment, because I did good work with them, they were like, hey, so basically his team was hiring for a software engineer, and he remembered me, and he reached out to me specifically saying, hey Matthew, our team wants you to, wants a software engineer, I can refer you. And basically, long story short, that interview process was so smooth that I'm pretty certain that in the interview, I'm pretty certain I failed the interview, but for some reason or the other, they still gave me the job offer. And that's just all through relationships that I built. And the BlackRock one, that was the most interesting one, because even though that was the one that I liked the most, and even though that was the offer that I liked the most, and that was the offer that I went with, I don't actually fully remember applying to BlackRock. I don't fully remember applying, but long story short, I got the offer for that one. And it's funny because for BlackRock, I wasn't invested in the interview process because I didn't actually expect to work for BlackRock. But it's funny how it worked. I ended up going for BlackRock, and so to answer your question, I got there through 3 different techniques. BlackRock was just, I don't know how I did that. Bloomberg was through reaching out to a recruiter, and Goldman Sachs was through a professional connection I had many years ago. So yeah.
So right now, are you working on financial services?
Like as in, am I working on a financial services in a startup kind of?
Currently, what's your
Not necessarily. So I'm mainly in the technology side of things. So I will admit, finance is an area that I'm working on to learn more, because like I said, I had 0 experience in finance when I was before BlackRock and all those other job offers. But now that I'm in BlackRock, they invest heavily in their employees. I can do the chartered financial accountant, all 3 of them for free if I wanted to. So financial services, the business side, is something I'm still learning. But once I piece the puzzle together, then perhaps I could learn more. And then share with you. But yeah.
Feel free to reach out to him after.
Yeah.
his questions. Maybe also connect on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Feel free to go to LinkedIn.
All right, cool.
Yeah, you can message me on LinkedIn.
Right, amazing. Any other questions?
Yes, hello. Thank you, Matthew, for those. Thank you, Matthew, once again. So my name is Joseph Bossa. Joseph, I have a startup. It's in 3D virtual tours. Well, my question to you is for the 6 days and the interactions you've had with maybe a couple of the founders, if any, the ones you've approached to, what is that niche in the market you are looking at, specifically the tech ecosystem? Yeah, maybe it can be AI, mobility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
trying to.
Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately on that, I haven't quite. I've just arrived in Kampala today, basically. So I just arrived in Kampala today. I haven't spoken to any founders. I spent my time for these past 6 days in Ginger, just talking with family, connecting with family and whatnot. And we focused on looking at farming stuff. There was a bit of fish farming, mainly sugarcane farming and stuff. So right now I've got my farmer hat on, but hopefully as I speak to some of you, I'll be able to get some ideas as to which sectors I'd be most interested in, whether it's AI, blockchain. But to answer your question prematurely, because I haven't actually heard much from anyone just yet, I'd say I'm looking at fintech because I work in finance. I'm like, how can I use my finance connections and finance knowledge to do something in the fintech sector? But part of me is like, hey, maybe fintech is oversaturated, maybe there's not much opportunity. But because I was in Dubai Fintech Summit. So I went to Dubai Fintech Summit just so that I could actually understand the problems in the fintech space. And I spoke to a few founders there, and they said that fintech, especially in Africa, has a lot of opportunities. So in Kenya, the most funded sector is fintech. So if you're here and you're working on a fintech, there's a high chance that you're going to be able to get funding. Fintech is what I'm looking at. Fintech is big. It's easy to understand. It's finance. So yeah, that's what I say now. But maybe after speaking to a few of you, I'll be able to get a better understanding of what exactly to look at.
Yeah, I guess a follow-up is, how long are you here for?
So I'm here for literally just three days, until either Sunday or Monday. I think I might stay until Monday morning, and then after that I'm going to fly to Rwanda, and I want to go to Norskin and go to the hub and speak to founders there, because I've never been to Rwanda before. So I'm interested in seeing what Rwanda is like in terms of a society and in terms of the tech ecosystem, because I hear they're trying to be the Singapore of Africa, right? So that's a big deal, right? And yeah, so I'm gonna go to Rwanda, see what I can do. I've already started making connections using social media. So yeah, I'm excited for that. But I'm here till Monday morning.
Hey everyone. I think it was time for us to listen to a female voice, so I was like, let me step up. My name is Patience Sankunda. First and foremost, I am now the community lead for the Founders Launch. Just got accepted this week, so I'm excited to see this turn up for this event. Secondly, I am a digital entrepreneur. I have some ventures within the digital or internet space. One is an e-commerce fitness business. We sell fitness accessories such as mats, ropes, resistance bands, gloves, etc. The business is called African Fit, AFROCANFIT. So you can search for us on social media or just check out africanfit.com. Get you some fitness products from African Fit, a Ugandan brand. And then the other one is Kulipa. It is a financial technology company. So when you mentioned that you are interested in the fintech space, most likely, I decided, why don't I just speak about what we do? So Kulipa is what we do currently is money transfers and also payment aggregation for businesses and individuals. We currently have a product called Lippy, LiPI, which you can download from your Play Store or App Store. And what it will enable you do is to send and receive money from either individuals or businesses. So anyone can sign up in the app, whether as a business or individual, and have transactions happening. We're currently working on a feature called bulk pay. It's actually a service. So if you're someone who sends out payments to multiple people, or a business that sends money to multiple people, you could sign up with us and get access to that service as and when it does arrive. And then we're also working on a product called Sasula API that will be basically helping businesses get various payment options to maybe integrate onto their applications, onto their websites, etc., and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I just wanted to market myself. I felt that I needed to just put that out there. Yeah, Kulipa is Culipa, which means to pay in Kenya.
Thank you. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, no. Thank you for sharing that patience as well, because I feel like patience is ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've already exchanged details already, so she's ahead of the game. But yeah, I'm excited to hear more about that.
Any other questions? Maybe from the back. There we go.
Yeah. Hi, Matthew. I currently work with Mkopa as a data analyst, but that's something I really want to move on from and really move into the startup realm. And one thing I've really been thinking about for a while is in asset management in countries such as Uganda, because most of the people around are still mostly low-income countries, so there's not too many people who have assets to be managed for them. However, when you look at so many people who get scammed in various investment schemes or all that, there's one key theme to read. People have some bit of money that they actually would wish to invest somewhere which can give them returns. So I ran a bit of sort of a hedge fund for a while, but one thing you quickly realize is there's not so many investment opportunities around. You either have treasuries which will have low yields, the stock market is basically stagnant, like there's no activity there. Nairobi Security Exchange has a bit, but really here there is not that kind of opportunity. However, you can really get a feel from people who have a bit of money to invest, maybe not millions of US dollars for like the kind of asset management BlackRock is doing, but do you think that is actually a space which is open? Because I'm trying to work on a fintech which is trying to gear towards what we want to call asset management for people who don't have to be rich. So that's something I'd like to talk to you about, and just really to understand if you think that is something which is viable in such a market here.
Thanks for that. I feel like that's a very extensive topic, and as I mentioned earlier, currently I'm focused on the technology side of things, so not necessarily the business side of asset management, financial services, but it's the technical aspects. However, I do know that there are asset managers all around the world, and specifically in Africa. So without a doubt, I do believe that there are opportunities for asset management in Africa. Further, I did read a report by McKinsey talking about the opportunities in fintech. So I was actually reading it on the plane coming to Uganda, and it's like a 50-page report on fintech opportunities. And I vividly recall asset management being one of those opportunities that is not yet exploited, because currently, the infrastructure, the payment gateways, peer-to-peer, payments and whatnot, all that kind of stuff, that is now in place. So what McKinsey said is that fintech in Africa has reached the end of the beginning. So the beginning of the fintech in Africa has now ended. It's now time for phase 2. So you're thinking about asset management, so you're ahead of the game. If you can find a solution that works and is able to mitigate those risks, like people losing their money, scams and whatnot, then you're in a good position to capitalize on the next evolution of fintech in Africa. That's what I say. So yeah, I'm happy to talk more as well.
Amazing. So we have about 4 minutes to wrap this up, and I was going to ask, is there any last minute question?
games, storybooks, and cartoons for children. And I was wondering if you have opportunities in that area as well, in that space as well for content creation, because there's this trend of doing more Afro-centric content. But I've been trying to look like for partners to like expand internationally and to grow, but you know, it's really hard. Like, I'm the marketing person, I'm the illustrator, I'm the author, I'm the game designer, I'm the concept designer, I'm everything. So it becomes overwhelming. So I've been looking for funding. I got seed funding, but it wasn't that much. But I've been looking to expand, and I just wish all my other colleagues in the industry get international funding. I've tried to get international funding, but I think it's really competitive. So I was wondering if you have those opportunities that I can tap into, because we are quite a number. I mean, a community, of people who do things like this.
Yeah.
But they don't have those it's like we don't know where the opportunities are.
Okay. Yeah. And to make sure that I've understood you correctly, you're asking if there are opportunities for receiving funding for content creation in Africa.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I will confess that I haven't actually got much experience in that domain. However, I do know like, because I'm quite big on networking, I'm quite big on going to networking events. I have, built up some connections of investors, but they just happen to be mainly focused on, the biggest industry, which is fintech. But I could look around for you and see if they're interested in other areas. And also, I think what would be really helpful is just to find if there's anyone who's in your space in content creation in Africa who has received funding. Because if they receive funding, right, then that's like the first point of contact for relationships. All you have to do is, as they say, birds of a feather flock together. So, find that person, find their network, and see if there's anyone else who's looking to invest in that space. But I'm happy to connect with you and look around in my network to see if anyone is investing in that space. But yeah.
Amazing. I guess that's about it for the questions that we had. So I just want to give you one more question. All right, cool.
My name is Pete Mukalere. So I was reading your bio, and you mentioned that you grew a company and you sold it. I'm just curious to understand, why didn't you actually, I came late, so that might be, you might have spoken about it, but why didn't you actually take on an entrepreneurship route and, continue doing, building another company and, and pushing on? So I'll just be very interested to see what made you make that decision from being an entrepreneur to being more of a, going BlackRock, and why you didn't actually follow through, because you were successful, so why didn't you continue?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Long story short, that was like my first first ever job after graduating, and I don't want to throw my professor under the bus, right? But my professor was quite the character, right? Because he was a professor for 2 decades or 3 decades. He was a very experienced guy, very good guy, but he wasn't a manager. So I found myself working for a startup and hating it. Like, before we were going to get acquired, I was actually ready to quit. Like, I was actually ready to quit. But there's something in me that's like, I don't want to be a quitter. So I just stuck through it. And then when we got the news that we were acquired, I was so happy, because that meant that a bigger company, which is called Crossword Cybersecurity PLC, they acquired us, and they had resources that could do my job for me. So it meant that I could actually leave the company on a good note, because I was actually mentally preparing everything. I was like, you know what, this is a failure. I worked at Start for 2 years. It was a failure, and now I'm trying to work at a bigger company. But fortunately, we were acquired before I quit, and as a result, when I was interviewing, it was a far stronger case saying, hey, I'm leaving another company, but we got acquired, and now I'm looking to work at a bigger company. And the reason I didn't go straight into entrepreneurship is because I learned that a startup isn't fun and games. It's not a luxury. It's not fun. It's actually a grind, and you have to actually have it in you. And at that point, I was burnt out from it, and I wanted to work in a bigger company. And you weren't here earlier, but what I said was I love software engineering. So it's not like I'm working. So I'm a software engineer right now, but it's not working. I'm earning money, but it feels like it's free money because I do it for free, right? So ultimately, I plan to stay as a software engineer. If I'm in a startup, I plan to continue to contribute technical expertise, but working in a big company was a very good decision because it enabled me to have to build up connections, build up capital, build up experience, have a reputable company on my resume, which makes things a lot easier than if I tried to go into another startup and then had that fail. So now that I've had both experiences, I've had experience of working in a startup and I've had experience in a big company. Now the opportunities are open. So yeah, that's what I say. But I feel like that's a very good question.
It really is. Okay, cool. So yes, Donald.
My name is Donald. I'm a lawyer and a startup founder. I run a legal tech startup which basically helps startups get incorporated and get legal documentation. But we are also discussing around fintechs because we've had a problem with payments, integrating payments into websites and stuff like that. So we're having an ongoing conversation about simplifying that process, but also like sometimes the fees you end up paying 10% on a transaction. So we're also having conversations around that. My question really is, number one, are you actively investing in Ugandan African startups? Number two, do you have some of the people you came with or back in London who are actively investing that we can plug into startups right now? Because we have a community, we have a deal book, we have all this information that we can just open up to you and say, what sectors do you want to invest in? And you can just take up, pick and choose and be able to plug in right away. Or if you want to collaborate, like you said, we can set up some meetings for you before you leave so you can meet and maybe do a dating session and see who you like, and we can get started right away.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I think it's two questions. So the first question is, am I actively investing? I invest, but I invest all in myself. So I'm happy to invest capital, but I'd also be investing my own time, my own resources in that. Do I have connections who are investing, say, just money and no skill set or no technical expertise? Yes, I do. So yes, I'm looking to invest my own money and my own time in Africa. But like I said, it has to be kind of like the ideal match. I know I said it's not hard to raise funding, but and obviously that's like you said, it's all about maybe I'm speaking from the perspective of privilege, but fundamentally I do have the connections, and I'm happy to have a conversation to learn more about what's going on out there, if there's any other opportunities for me to meet people and build things. But yeah, that's what I say.
Right. So in that case, I want to give you the opportunity to share maybe a final thought, or as we like to call it, parting shots, with everyone here. And yeah, then I guess we'll wrap it up and hand it over to Donald to close this off.
I don't really have much else to say because, like I said, I know I came here, to talk, but really I wanted to be here to listen. So ultimately, I'm looking forward to learning more about the Ugandan tech ecosystem, learning more about what's being built, learning more about the investment opportunities, and seeing where we can take it from there. So I'm happy to chat. And the power has gone out, which means I should stop talking now.
Luckily, he has a backup.
Yeah, luckily we have power here. So, but I feel like that was timed perfectly because now the power's gone. This is done. We're all good to go. So, yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Matthew. For everyone here, founders, engineers, and everyone alike, thank you very much for making the time to engage with us through this happy hour. Our guest has been Mathew Mukalere. Yeah, it's Mathew Mukalere, and I've been your host, Collins Michael Mbolachalo. I am also a startup founder and a software engineer. I work with a startup called Wapi. This is me now shamelessly plugging. I work with a startup called Wapi, and we pretty much help connect startups, businesses to talent. Do you want to build out your MVP? Do you want to get a team to pretty much work on either sales, design, or anything within the digital space? We're happy to connect you to those people. On LinkedIn, Collins Mbolachalo. On Twitter, Musakoli. Instagram, Musakoli. I think those are the only ones.
Yep. Just LinkedIn, Mathew Mukalere. Twitter, also Mathew Mukalere. But I'm mainly on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. That's my best location.